Cookie, I know you want the farmer's dog, but they're not a sponsor yet, so you're going to have to keep eating the Nutro pellets. Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of JL's Book Club, where we don't talk about Fight Club because I didn't read Fight Club. Maybe one day that will be different, but I haven't. I've seen the movie multiple times. I feel no need to read the book. Before we get to this month's books, as always, we have a beverage of the week. Month. It's been a couple months since I slipped up there. Month. You wish you got weekly book reviews. No, you don't. Even the 19 of you who watch this don't wish that. But this month's beverage is unsweetened pure leaf real brewed tea. When you go to the store and you buy the wrong tea, unsweetened pure life tea. Now, my voice is hurting me a little bit today, but I'm going to soldier on through this book review because after all, these reviews before they go public range anywhere from 11 to 35 views. So I'm not going to allow something like a deeply painful vocal box stop me from providing to you guys. But I just burped before. I'm giving you a little behind the scenes commentary. I burped, something I do plenty of times. But the vomit, it was one of those burps where the vomit kind of perks up a little bit. It burned my throat. And I don't mean like burned, like I dropped the books I was holding and had to go drink water. So I think I might be turning into one of the aliens from the Aliens movies. Because in the words of the recently married Dane Cook, that acidy spit, I want that. I think I might have that. I think I might be morphing into all the bile and anger and hostility, might be changing my chemical composition. So look out, if you come heckle me at a show, I might spit acid in your face. And, that'd be pretty cool. That'd be a pretty cool way for my comedy career to end, to maim a heckler. Anyway, guys, let's talk books, shall we? I'm reviewing 2 books. I didn't get to all 3 fiction books, but I got to 2 this month. I've been reading like a real beast recently. So the 2 books this month, Chain Gang All-Stars by Nana Kwame Adjei-Brenyah, which I think is the beginning of The Lion King. Nana Kwame Adjei-Brenyah. That's a pretty good joke. Oh, you literary types, boy, do you get the good ones. But seriously, guys. Nana Kwame Adjei. Anyway, you get it. The girlfriend formerly known as Righteous is laughing. And the other book is The Boys by Katie Hafner, if I'm pronouncing that right. So we've got 2 very differently named people, a white woman and a black man. So we're calling this month JL. The thing about these 2 books that's I think of note. I had never heard of either author, no shade to them, but I read the reviews in the New York Times. The Boys was like late last year, and it wasn't even the Sunday book review. It was just a review on like a Thursday in the arts section, and I was feeling artsy. And I read it, and it was a very positive review that intrigued me. And I said, you know what? It's always easy to pick up a non-fiction book of some topic or person that interests you, or a fiction book from an author you're already very familiar with, or a very hyped up book. But, part of me was thinking as a comedian who, is constantly struggling to get their material and their name out there, I thought, well, if I stumble upon some author I'm not familiar with, these people have like vibrant careers. It's not like I'm making them, but just in my world, I had not heard of them. And so I said, well, get the book. But maybe you'll be pleasantly surprised. That's how you discover new things. And Chain Gang All-Stars was an easier selection because it was the front page review of the Sunday Times book review a few months ago. So that was obviously more of a, hey, if this interests you at all, if this sounds at all interesting, because fiction can be tougher because you have to actually want to read a review of a fiction book if you've never heard of the author or aren't familiar with the book. Stephen King comes out with a new book, very easy to be like, well, I have read like 8 Stephen King books, cool. A biography on Axl Rose, as an example, just frontman for my favorite. Of course I want to buy that book. I don't need to know something about the author or anything. But I bought both of these, sort of doing what I felt is almost doing a little bit of a public service with my book reviews to say, hey, I'll try to discover once in a while some new people that I'm not familiar with and then pass that on if I like them or don't like them. And obviously if I didn't like them, I could bury their careers right now. They'll never see the light of day again. But instead, the sun is breaking, it's dawn. Adjei-Brenyah. Okay, that's enough, because now we're getting probably into hate speech territory. You're allowed to mock his name with the Lion King song 3 times, and that's it. Those are the rules, and I want to abide by them. But let's talk Chain Gang All-Stars first. Chain Gang All-Stars is a kind of book that I really like, because what it's really saying is we're a shitty society, and I'm just going to extrapolate that into a near future that is unlikely, but still sort of possible. It's a book about basically a prison, a prison death fighting league that is hugely popular on pay-per-view, on cable. Like, in other words, it's sort of taking our prison industrial complex, merging it with our sort of MMA, bloodlust kind of sports, and exaggerating it a little bit into some near future where prisoners can basically sign a deal, rapists and murderers, they can sign a deal where they basically agree, I will fight to the death, but there's incentives, like as long as you keep fighting, you get more perks, your prison life is a little bit better, and after 3 years you can go free, which rarely happens, obviously, but people become very connected to these athletes, and it's among the interesting things because, you sometimes read, it's easy to think of older books as literature. Like, these are fiction, these are novels. But we think of like older books as literature. Now, I would say something like The Bonfire of the Vanities, which is a 1980s novel by Tom Wolfe, my favorite fiction book of all time, probably. That's literature. It's just, it feels almost like literature, you just need to be old before somebody can call you literature. So this is a novel, but there are elements of it where I was like, am I reading too much into this? Am I trying to dissect this like an English major, or just am I reading this for enjoyment? But there, for instance, this weapon that they use to sort of make people feel pain is called an influencer. And it's sort of the greatest / worst torture device ever developed. And in my mind, obviously being very angry at social media, I was like, I wonder if influencer is a double meaning there. Or if it was literally just the word he chose. Is he making social commentary on what an influencer is, or is it just me being like, can I also interpret this as meaning social media people suck? And obviously, being that it's prison in our country as it is, the majority of the athletes and competitors are black people, and the two of the stars, including the biggest star, are black women. And there's obviously commentary in that. And the one brief passage I'm going to read to you, because it's hard to read like a fiction passage and kind of give you, like, without spoiling anything. But here's a brief paragraph, just to, which is the social commentary is not too thick, but it's, when you're dealing with American prisons and violence, it's hard not to have a message that's clear. The man was one of so many, and here was another piece of elegance. He clearly felt awe and respect for these 2 women, but this is where they have fans. Part of their agreement is they have to go meet fans. They have to do public appearances, which is funny because these are convicted murderers, but they've now, that it's sort of, that's one of the many ways where it's like, oh, we can almost lose our fear of dangerous people when we trivialize them, but in doing so, we're also trivializing their existence and their lives and their humanity. So this is at one of the meet and greets. So there's a man meeting. I should go back a little bit. Okay. That's really them. They're taller than I thought, a man standing next to Mitchell said, his voice drenched in awe. Mitchell shifted his weight a little, then spoke. 6'1" and 5'10", but taller in their boots. It's really something, the man said. He was about Mitchell's height, meaning that both of them were significantly shorter than either Stax or Thurwar. Those are the 2 main women and like sort of 2 of the top ranked fighters in the I forget the name of it, but basically let's just call it the Prison Murder Sports League. That's not the name, but you get it. The man was one of so many, and here was another piece of elegance. He clearly felt awe and respect for these 2 women, but also was not bothered by the fact that they lived a razor's edge from death. He knew it likely helped that they were black women. market research found that the public generally cared less for their survival. In the center of the complicated nexus of adored and hated, desired but also easy to watch being destroyed, it had to be black women. Thurwar and Melancholia Bishop before her had taught audiences the feelings that he wanted viewers to have for all of the links. The links are the competitors. That I just sort of processed because the whole book you're reading, and it's like, you would think, not to be sexist, but you would think the best fighter would be a very strong man, right? You would think that in a prison, a co-ed prison fighting league, that the strongest competitors would be men. But in this one, even though there are men who are of high ranking, it's always women who are black women who are the most popular and the most successful. And I feel like it's also, in terms of there's people protesting this is a book where on every side of the equation, it's sort of black women who are dominating the space, whether it's as athletes or the protest movement is led by women, almost like a Black Lives Matter, but against prison murder shows. So it was just a very interesting take, because I think there's a clear message there, which is trust black women. Ding. But it was also about highlighting the, like that paragraph just said, that sort of unspoken fact of the lower value and the demeaning of that particular group, and they are sort of exalted and forceful in every phase of the plot. It's a very quick read, but not, like, I didn't want to read it quickly, because like I said, sometimes you read fiction and you're like, oh, I just can breeze through this and get the plot, but I wanted to kind of like take my time with it, because it felt like it was a little more literature and not just a beach novel. Not that there's anything wrong with those. But I definitely liked it. It definitely feels like made for a movie or a series. You know, anybody out there who's old enough is probably thinking, oh, it's kind of like The Running Man a little bit. It's like an updated, more graphic, less funny take on The Running Man almost. The Arnold Schwarzenegger movie, for those of you that don't remember. But it's a very good book. I recommend it. I enjoyed reading it. It was tense. The last 100 pages, and this is where it gets kind of that cinematic feel. It starts to really, we're headed towards a difficult conclusion without giving away any of the plot points. So it really starts to kind of pick up the pace. And I remember, like, as the pace picked up, I was like, holy shit, there's only like 25 pages left. Like, so it's an enjoyable read. There's something very pop culture-y about it, but also a little more depth than your usual novel. But it's very good. And the real question is, how close will we get as a society to something like this? It will start with somebody dying in the ring during an MMA match. Will we ever hit the brakes on sort of our collective shame and bloodlust as a society, or will we continue devolving? And this is obviously sort of dystopian fiction to a certain degree, but it's also one of those things where you go, in 100 years, are people going to look at this kind of book and go, oh, it called a lot more than we expected at the time. Maybe we should have watched that dead comedian's book reviews. Oh well, he's dead now. Let's watch more violence. Anyway, guys, first book done, but that's not all you're getting this week. Month, you're getting another book review. And this one's called The Boys. No, it has nothing to do with the delightful Amazon series, which is also like Chain Gang All-Stars, super violent with commentary, social commentary. But The Boys, I really enjoyed reading this. There is a plot twist in the book that is not... It's surprising. I think the critics kind of raised my expectations a little more than they should have been for like, oh my God, like it's not, it's not a Sixth Sense type of twist sort of, but it's a good twist. But what I realized is the twist happens, it's only a 240 page novel. And it's more about, it's a book about loneliness. It's a book about, somebody who, if I had to guess, seems kind of on the spectrum the main character, Ethan. And as we're getting through the book, it's mostly first person. And it's all first person, but from different perspectives. And it's kind of a weird thing. I just enjoyed reading it. It's, like I said, it's short. The twist comes about 150, 160 pages into the book. But I remember just reading through it and just enjoying the way she wrote. So it's like I don't know if I've had a lot of books where I would just say, yeah, some stuff happens and it's an interesting book and an interesting story, but it was almost the way she wrote it, the pace of the writing, the style. I just kind of enjoyed the process of reading the book. It was a quick read also, but it's a very good book. And I like one of the reviews is I would just read because it felt like, oh yes. Now I might not use one of these words, but one of the critics said, or one of the authors who gave praise to it, she's not a critic, I don't think, I absolutely loved this little miracle of a book. Now, I would take away miracle, but that's kind of how I felt. Like at the end of it, I was like, wow, that was such a pleasant, interesting read. And it's really quick, and I'm guessing I bought this like late 2022 when it came out, so it's got to be close to paperback by now if this interests you. But it's very hard to give away too much of the book. But basically this guy who seems sort of autistic, which is almost a good device because you get so much detail from his perspective. And there's times where you're almost like, God, this guy's tedious, but you keep reading because you're just enjoying the way she writes. And he falls in love with a coworker, they get together, and he's very stressed about having kids. So they get these foster kids to start to like, get the experience of parenting. And that's sort of when the relationship starts to go haywire, and it's hard for me to talk about the book in any great detail without giving away something, but it's literally one of those ones where you're just like, I just liked reading it. They're both enjoyable reads. One is much more if you're a sort of like, that was a very exciting, enjoyable adventure and I want to see this made into a movie kind of book. And then there's just it's a cloudy day and I'm in my office or on my couch and there's nothing good on TV, and hey, an hour later I just read like a third of this really good book and I want to read more. So it's two positive reviews, but very different vibes from both books. But I recommend both. So The Boys by K.E. Hafner and Chain Gang All-Stars by NKAB, as he's known in the boy band circuit. Nah, can't do it. You know the rules. So those are this month's reviews. Now next month I'll be on the road, but you may get a special book review. I may be packing the smoking jacket for Las Vegas and doing a special Venetian edition of the book show after I see U2 perform at the Sphere. All these were paid for before I lost my day job. I'm not a reckless, irresponsible person. They were all paid for. In case you're wondering if your Patreon dollars are going to some, crazy person who's spending like there's no tomorrow. That was all law firm money that paid for these extravagant trips. But next month, the Supreme Court, the piece of shit institution, comes back to curtail rights and pimp Ginny and Clarence Thomas. So I've got 2 Supreme Court books I'll be reviewing next month. Ding dong. 9 Black Robes by Joan Biskupic. I don't know how you pronounce that. It almost looks like hiccup, but with extra letters. Biskupic. Well, she's a senior Supreme Court analyst for CNN, and apparently never took off her pants during a Zoom meeting, so take that, Jeffrey Toobin. And the other one is The Shadow Docket by Stephen Vladeck. So 2 Supreme Court books next month for Supreme Court month. So yeah, for all 7 of you who like books and Supreme Court tea, it's about to get spilled. So thank you for being Patreon subscribers. Thank you for watching the book reviews. I know many people have taken some of my recommendations. I'm basically like if instead of 133 Patreon subscribers, I had 133 million, I'd be moving units better than Oprah. But I don't have that many, so I'm moving a couple of units. So you're welcome, writers of the world. So that's it for this month. Thank you for watching. And remember, books, they're like documentaries for smart people.